My name is Taylor Brennan. I'm 29. At 8:47 a.m. on the morning of my grandmother's funeral, my older sister Lisa grabbed my arm in the church parking lot before I could even get through the door, and she said, loud enough for 6 people standing nearby to hear, "I need you to sign the farm over to me before we go inside. I already drafted the paperwork." I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at the paperwork in her other hand. I looked at the hearse parked 12 feet behind her, still holding our grandmother's body inside. "Lisa," I said, "she's still in the car." "Taylor." Her voice had that specific flat quality she used when she wanted me to know I was wasting her time. "I've been patient. This has gone on long enough. You got your share already. 6 years of free rent on that farm. Now it's time for the rest of us to get what's ours." My cousin Denise was standing 5 feet to my left. She pretended to check her phone. My father's brother, Uncle Ray, had gone very still near the church steps. Nobody said anything. "That wasn't free rent," I said. That was you living on somebody else's property," Lisa cut in. "Playing farmer, playing nurse. Don't dress it up, Taylor. Grandma felt sorry for you. We all did." She held the papers higher. "Sign now or this gets ugly." I felt something cold move through me. Not fear, exactly. More like recognition. She had planned this. She had planned this for the exact moment I would be most emotionally exposed, surrounded by people who wouldn't know what to say, in front of a hearse that still held the woman I had loved and washed and fed, and sat with through 219 nights of fever and confusion. She had planned this, and she had brought witnesses on purpose. "No," I said. The word came out so quiet that Lisa blinked, like she'd misheard. "Excuse me?" I said no. Lisa's jaw shifted. A very specific look came over her face, the one she'd worn since we were children, the one that said she was recalibrating, that she was deciding whether to press harder or perform wounded. She chose press harder. "You ungrateful little," she started. "The service starts in 11 minutes, I said. "And our grandmother is in that car." I walked past her into the church. "Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself, really standing up, in parking lots, in offices, in the middle of grief, means something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. I want to know." Let me take you back 9 years to when I was 20 years old, and Patricia Davis was still Patricia Davis. Not a legal matter, not an estate, not a contested asset. Just my grandmother, sitting in her kitchen on Route 9 outside of Harlan, Kentucky, at 7 in the morning, with a cup of black coffee and a cast-iron skillet that she'd owned since 1971. The farm smelled like pine sap and horse sweat, and the lavender she hung in bundles from the kitchen rafters. In the summer, the whole house held that smell, lavender and wood smoke and something underneath it, something older, like the land itself was breathing. She was teaching me how to make her biscuits, not the recipe, the feel. "You have to know when to stop," she said, her hands working the dough without looking. "Most people ruin biscuits because they don't trust themselves to stop. They keep working it because working feels productive, but you're just building up the gluten. You're making it tough when it wants to be tender." I was 20. I was probably thinking about something else. But that sentence landed somewhere and stayed. She looked up at me with her gray eyes. She had very direct eyes, my grandmother. Eyes that had seen 60 years of this farm and didn't apologize for any of it. And she said, "You know what you are, Taylor? You're someone who knows when to stop working the dough. That's rarer than you think." I didn't know what she meant then. I do now. She tapped the side of my hand once, the way she always did when she was about to say something important. "Whatever happens," she said, "this land knows who loves it. Land always knows." I remember the light through the window that morning. Yellow and sideways, the way Kentucky light comes in September. I remember the exact weight of the dough in my hands. I didn't know then that I was 4 months away from moving into the back bedroom and staying for 6 years. I didn't know that her heart was already starting to fail in small, undetectable ways. I didn't know that the conversation I was half listening to would become the most important thing she ever said to me. But she knew. Patricia Davis always knew. The first time I realized how bad it was going to get, I was 23, and I'd been living on the farm for 3 years. It was a Tuesday in October, the 14th, which I remember because it was the day after my grandmother's 78th birthday, and we'd had a small party. Just her and me and Aunt June, and the Hargrove family from the next property over. And Grandma had worn her pearl brooch, the one her mother had given her, and she'd been happy, really happy, clear-eyed and laughing. Lisa drove up the next afternoon without calling. I was in the north pasture when I heard the car. I came in through the back door at 4:22 p.m., with mud on my boots and hay on my jacket. I'd been assisting on a difficult delivery, a breech calf for the Hargroves, and I'd been up since 2 in the morning, and I looked it. Lisa was standing in the kitchen in a wool coat that cost more than my monthly stipend. She had a leather portfolio under her arm. She looked at me the way she always looked at me, like I was evidence of something. "You look like you slept in a barn," she said. "I've been in a barn," I said. "Since 2 a.m., there was a breech delivery." "Right." She set her portfolio on my grandmother's kitchen table without being invited to. "I need to talk to you about the arrangement here." Grandma was in the living room. I could hear the television. She didn't come in. "The arrangement," I said. "You've been living here for 3 years, rent-free, using Grandma's utilities, her car, her everything." Lisa opened the portfolio. "I think it's time we formalize things. Either you start paying $1,200 a month, which is what a fair market rental would be in this county, or, Lisa, I'm her caretaker. You're her granddaughter who decided to drop out of community college and move in. I'm a certified vet tech. I work with Dr. Anselm Price's practice 4 days a week. I also manage this property, which includes getting free housing and a stipend." Her voice stayed completely level. "While the rest of us have actual careers and mortgages and lives." "You have a condo in Nashville and a lifestyle blog," I said. "And you visit for 4 days a year." Something flickered in her face. She closed the portfolio. "You've always been like this," she said. "You know that? You latch on to whoever is the most vulnerable, and you make yourself indispensable. You did it with Mom after the divorce. You're doing it with Grandma now. And then when it's over, you act like you deserve something for it." She tilted her head slightly. "Grandma feels obligated to you, Taylor. That's not love. That's guilt." My face burned. The kind of burn that starts behind the eyes and moves forward. My hands had gone tight at my sides, and I had to actively choose not to let them shake. "You need to leave," I said. "I'll leave when I'm ready." But she picked up the portfolio. "Think about the $1,200. She didn't wait for an answer. She walked past me and out the back door and got in her car and drove away. I stood in the kitchen for 3 minutes without moving. From the living room, the television kept going. Later that night, I heard my grandmother on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was passing by her door. "She works herself raw for this place," Grandma was saying. "I know what she does. I see her. Don't you tell me she doesn't deserve—" A pause. "I'm handling it, Robert." Robert. My father. I kept walking. Over the next year, the calls between Lisa and my father increased. I know this because Lisa started sending me texts. Not angry ones, not confrontational ones, but a particular kind of text that felt like it was building a record. Things like, "Just checking in. How are Grandma's finances? Is there anything being managed that the family should know about?" I started saving them. Every single one. I have a folder on my phone called Garden. Boring enough that nobody would open it. By the time I was 25, Grandma's decline had accelerated. Her memory began slipping in a specific way. Not gone, but unreliable. Like a radio signal that comes in and out. She knew me. She almost always knew me. But there were days when she thought I was her daughter Ruth, or when she'd wake at 3 in the morning certain that the pigs needed feeding, and I would have to sit with her in the dark and talk her back to herself. Dr. Anselm Price gave me a schedule reduction to 3 days a week so I could manage her care. He documented this. He noted in my employment file that my reduced hours were attributable to family caregiving obligations for an elderly dependent, dated June 3rd of that year. My father visited that summer. It was the first time in 14 months. He sat at the kitchen table and ate the food I'd made and drank the coffee I'd brewed, and then he said, "I want to talk to you about the will." "Then talk to Grandma," I said. "Grandma's not always lucid." "She's lucid enough." He looked at his coffee cup. My father had the same coloring as Lisa, dark hair, quick eyes, a face built for seeming reasonable. "I'm not saying she isn't," he said. "I'm saying that when she's not, decisions could be made that she wouldn't sanction if she were thinking clearly. I want to make sure there are protections in place." "There are," I said. "She has an attorney." "Wendell Pratt," he said, like he already knew. "Taylor, I'm going to be honest with you. Lisa and I have discussed this. If something happens and the estate isn't handled fairly, defined fairly," he paused, "equally, between the three of us." I looked at him. I thought about 14 months. I thought about the folder on my phone. I thought about my grandmother's hands, which were getting harder to straighten in the mornings, and the way she sometimes called me by my mother's name in the middle of the night, and how I always answered anyway. "Dad," I said, "in the last 6 years, I have been here every day. I have managed every medical appointment, every medication, every financial decision she authorized me to make. I have documented every single one. I have 2 promissory notes she signed, one for $23,000 that she lent you in 2019, and one for $23,000 that she lent you in 2021, both with interest. I've seen the originals." My father's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. "That's not what this is about," he said. "I know what it's about," I said. "I just wanted you to know that I know." He left 2 days later. He didn't say goodbye to Grandma on his way out. She didn't ask where he'd gone. The certified letter arrived on a Thursday morning in February, when the ground was still frozen and the horses needed extra feed, and Grandma had had 3 bad nights in a row. It was addressed to Patricia Elaine Davis, care of Taylor Brennan. Return address, a Nashville law firm I didn't recognize. I set it on the table in front of Grandma during her clearer morning hours. She looked at it for a long moment. "Don't open it," she said. "Grandma, I know what it is." Her voice was very quiet, very certain. "Lisa." She looked up at me. "Has Wendell called?" "Not recently. Call him today." She pushed the letter back across the table. "Don't sign anything. Don't let them in the house. And call Wendell." I called Wendell Pratt that afternoon. He was a small man with a careful voice who had been Patricia Davis's attorney for 22 years. He listened to me describe the letter without interrupting. "Don't open it," he said. "I'll handle it from my end." "What is it?" "It's a power of attorney document," he said. "From your sister's Nashville attorney, sent by mail." A pause. "Taylor, your grandmother is not going to sign it." "How do you know?" "Because she called me 3 days ago and told me exactly what was coming." Something moved in my chest that I didn't have a name for at the time. Relief, partly. Something else. "She called you," I said. "Patricia has been calling me, on and off, for 4 years, making preparations." He paused again. "There will be a time when I can tell you more. It isn't now. But I want you to know. She sees what you're doing. She's always seen it." I sat with that for a moment. "Okay," I said. "In the meantime, keep your records. Everything." "I will." I hung up and went back to the barn because 2 of the mares were showing signs of respiratory stress, and Dr. Price needed me to monitor their temperatures through the evening. I documented the time logs as I always did. I wrote down 4:51 p.m. At a Tuesday, February 18th, Temperature check. Both mares stable. I wrote everything down. I always had. Grandma Patricia Davis died on a Saturday morning in late April at 6:09 a.m. with her hand in mine. The light through her bedroom window was the same yellow sideways light I'd seen 9 years earlier in the kitchen. The lavender bundles in the kitchen still held a ghost of their smell. She was 81. She had been, in every way I know how to measure, a good and careful woman. I sat with her for 40 minutes before I called anyone. Then I called Wendell Pratt. He answered on the second ring. "I know," he said. "I'll be in touch." Lisa and my father arrived the next day. I don't know who called them. Maybe they'd been monitoring. They arrived in separate cars but within 20 minutes of each other, which suggested coordination. My father went through the house like he was doing inventory. He opened kitchen drawers. He paused at the desk in the hallway for a long time. Lisa found me in the kitchen. "We need to talk about next steps," she said. "The will reading is in 9 days," I said. "Wendell Pratt's office." "I know when it is." She set her bag down. "But there are things that need to happen before then. The farm needs to be assessed. There's a real estate contact I've already been in touch with." I put my coffee cup down very carefully. "You've been in touch with a real estate agent?" "I've been responsible, unlike some people." She met my eyes. "Taylor, you have had 6 years of free housing and free labor on this farm. The fair thing, the obvious thing, is for the estate to be split 3 ways and the farm to be sold. You'll get your third. That's more than you deserve, frankly, given what you've already taken," I said. She blinked. "That's the word you were going to say? Taken. What I've already taken." Something settled in her face. Something confirmed. I wasn't going to say that. "You've said it before," I said. "In different rooms to different people. I have the texts, Lisa." Her expression didn't break, but her hand tightened on the strap of her bag. "Grandma is barely cold," she said. "And you're already talking about legal action." "I'm talking about a will reading in 9 days, that's all." I picked my coffee back up. "You should respect this house while you're in it." She left an hour later. My father stayed 2 more days. He walked the property twice. He didn't say much to me. On his second evening, he sat down at the kitchen table and started to say something, and then stopped. "Whatever you think you've built here," he said finally, "it's not going to hold." "Okay, Dad." "Lisa has attorneys, real attorneys, not some small-town estate man." "Okay." He looked at me for a long moment. I looked back at him. "You've always been stubborn," he said. "I learned from Grandma," I said. He left the next morning. The 9 days between the funeral and the will reading were the strangest of my life. I kept working. There were 3 farms I was covering with Dr. Price's practice that week, including a difficult colic case at the Moreland property on Tuesday afternoon that ran past midnight. I have the call log. Arrived 7:43 p.m., departed 12:19 a.m., horse stabilized. I slept in my grandmother's house every night. I watered her lavender. I fed the horses. On the 6th day, Wendell Pratt called. "I need you to come to my office tomorrow," he said, "before the formal reading. There's something I've been asked to give you." "By who?" "By Patricia," he said. In her own words, she asked me to wait until 6 days after her passing, when she said you would be, and I'm quoting here, "settled enough to hear it." My throat closed. 2 o'clock? He said. "Yes," I said. "I'll be there." I drove to Wendell Pratt's office the next afternoon. It was a small building on Merchant Street in town. Red brick, 2 stories, a parking lot with 4 spaces. I'd been there once before, years ago, to notarize a medical proxy document for Grandma. I remembered the waiting room smelled like old paper and good coffee. Wendell was alone when I arrived. He stood up when I came in, which struck me as formal for a man his age, like he was marking the moment. He set a white envelope on the desk between us. It was sealed with wax, real wax, a dark red, and in the lower left corner in my grandmother's handwriting it said, "For Taylor, when the time is right." She sealed it herself, Wendell said, 8 months ago when she was still clear-headed. She asked me to witness it and keep it separate from the estate documents. He pushed it slightly toward me. She said you'd know what to do with it. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. I turned it over. "Do you want privacy?" Wendell asked. "No," I said. "Stay, please, stay." I broke the wax seal. The paper inside was cream-colored, her personal stationery, the kind she'd had for 30 years. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered from earlier years, but still legible, still completely herself. I read it aloud, because I needed to hear it in the room. "Dear Taylor, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Lisa and Robert are already doing what I knew they would do. I'm sorry I couldn't stop it while I was alive. I tried, in every legal way I could find, and I believe I've managed it. But I'm sorry you have to go through this part. Do you remember the morning I was teaching you biscuits? You were 20 years old. I told you that you knew when to stop working the dough. I wasn't really talking about biscuits. I was talking about you, about the fact that you've always known when to stay with something and when the thing is finished. That's rarer than people know. The original will and trust documents are with Wendell. You'll meet with him soon. Everything is in order. The farm, the savings account, and the mineral rights, which are worth considerably more than your father knows, are yours, in full, not split, yours. Inside this envelope, you'll find a certified copy of the trust, signed and dated October 9th, with Wendell and June as witnesses, bank statements from the past 4 years showing the $341,000 savings account in your name as beneficiary, with no joint ownership, both signed promissory notes. Robert owes $23,000 from March of 2019, $23,000 from September of 2021, totaling $46,000 with accumulated interest. A statement from the Harlan County Mineral Rights Assessment Office, dated February of this year, estimating the subsurface value at $1.2 million. 6 years of your work logs, ranch call records, and my own written testimony, notarized, describing everything you did. Don't let them call you the girl who got free housing. You are the person who stayed. You are the person who answered in the night when nobody else would come. You are not what they said. You are who I know. All my love, always. Your grandma who makes the biscuits right." I read it 3 times. The second time I read it, my hands were shaking. The third time, they'd stopped. Wendell sat quietly through all 3 readings. When I set the letter down, he said, "She was a very thorough woman." "She was," I said. "The mineral rights assessment in particular. I believe that will be a surprise to the other parties." "I think so too," I said. I sat with the documents for 40 minutes in his office, going through each one. The trust was 43 pages. The promissory notes had her signature in the careful cursive she'd always used. The mineral rights estimate was from a certified assessor, dated February 14th, 6 weeks before she died. She had known, exactly, that she was going. She had arranged everything. I thought about all the mornings she'd been at her kitchen table when I came in from the barn, all the times she'd said very little, all the times I'd assumed she was simply tired or drifting. She had been planning. "What do I do with the pearl brooch?" I asked. Lisa took it the day after the funeral, said she was keeping it safe. Wendell opened a drawer in his desk. He set a small velvet pouch on the table. "Your grandmother gave it to me directly," he said. 3 months ago, for safekeeping." He paused. "The one Lisa took is a replica. Patricia had it made last year." I stared at the velvet pouch for a moment. Then, for the first time since Grandma died, I laughed. It was a short laugh, almost involuntary, that came up from somewhere I hadn't expected. Wendell allowed himself a small smile. "She thought of everything," I said. "She did," he said. "She really did." The will reading was 3 days later. I arrived at Wendell Pratt's office at 9:45 a.m. for a 10 a.m. reading. The conference room was small, a rectangular table that seated 8 narrow windows, recessed lighting that made everything look slightly formal and slightly clinical. There was a tray of water glasses and a box of tissues on the credenza against the wall. Lisa was already there when I walked in. She was dressed in a charcoal blazer and had her real estate contacts business card visible on the table in front of her. I noticed this deliberately. I think she put it there deliberately. And she had her leather portfolio. Her husband Derek sat beside her, his hands folded, his face professionally neutral. He'd said approximately 14 words to me in 4 years of knowing him. There were two other people present. Aunt June, my grandmother's sister, 74 years old, who lived in Corbin and had driven 2 hours, and Marcus Tilden, who was Grandma's accountant and had been summoned as a witness. My father arrived at 10:07 a.m. He came in brushing something off his sleeve and sat down heavily. He glanced at me once and then looked at Wendell. "Can we begin?" he said, as though he'd been waiting. "We're beginning at 10, Wendell said mildly. "We've begun." I sat at the end of the table across from Wendell. I had my folder. I set it down in front of me without opening it. Lisa looked at the folder. She looked at me. "Nice of you to dress up," she said quietly. I was wearing the clothes I wore to church. I said nothing. Wendell opened the estate documents. He had a reading voice that was precise and unhurried. The voice of a man who understood that words in a room become permanent. He began with the standard language. I watched my father shift in his chair. I watched Lisa's hand move to her portfolio and then back. "The estate of Patricia Elaine Davis," Wendell read, "having been established as an irrevocable living trust on October 9th of last year, is not subject to probate and does not pass under the terms of a standard will. The trust documents supersede any other documentation and were drafted, signed, and witnessed in accordance with Kentucky state law at a time when the grantor was of sound mind and legal capacity." My father's head came up very slowly. "Wait," he said. "A living trust? Not a revocable will?" "No," Wendell said. "The trust was executed last October. The beneficiary designations are irrevocable as of that date." "She was in decline in October," Lisa said immediately. Her voice was smooth, but something underneath it had gone tight. "She wasn't always lucid. This could be challenged." "The trust was executed on a Monday morning," Wendell said. "I was present. Your Aunt June was present. Dr. Carrie Wentworth, your grandmother's primary physician, was also present and has provided a written attestation of her mental acuity at the time. Additionally, the session was recorded on video, per your grandmother's request." Silence. "Recorded," my father said. "At Patricia's explicit request," Wendell said. She was concerned about exactly this conversation. Lisa sat back. Her jaw was working slightly, the way it did when she was recalibrating. I'd seen that look my whole life. Wendell continued. "To Aunt June. A collection of letters and photographs, the mahogany rocking chair, and a sum of $18,000. To Marcus Tilden. A bequest of $5,000 in recognition of his service. To Lisa Brennan, my grandmother's recipe collection, bound in the green binder on the kitchen shelf, and a framed photograph of the two of them from 1987. Lisa went very still. "That's it?" she said. "That is the complete bequest to Lisa Ann Brennan," Wendell said. "She can't—" Lisa's voice cracked and then she brought it back down. "That's not possible. There are assets, there's a savings account, there's the farm, there's—" "To Taylor Marie Brennan," Wendell read, and I felt the whole room tilt slightly, the way a room does when something enormous and quiet enters it. "Sole beneficiary of the Patricia Elaine Davis Irrevocable Living Trust. The full title and deed to the Brennan Davis family farm at 4417 Route 9, Harlan County, Kentucky, comprising 74 acres and all standing structures. The full balance of savings account number, ending in 7741, currently valued at $341,000, full ownership of all mineral rights associated with the property, as surveyed and assessed February 14th of this year, with an estimated value of $1.2 million. Appointment as sole executor of all remaining estate matters. My father stood up. "This is a fraud," he said. "She was manipulated. Taylor was alone with her for 6 years. She influenced Robert." Wendell's voice didn't rise. "I would counsel you very carefully right now." "I'm not taking counsel from Robert." It was Aunt June. She was looking at my father with an expression I recognized, the same one my grandmother used when she was finished being patient. "Sit down. June, sit down." He sat. I don't think he entirely meant to, but he sat. "I want to contest this," Lisa said. She'd gotten herself back to controlled. Her portfolio was open. "We have grounds. Undue influence, diminished capacity." "You're welcome to consult your own attorney," Wendell said. "But I'd like to share a few things that may affect that decision." He opened his own folder. "Your grandmother anticipated this response," he said. "She asked me to provide the following to all parties in the event of a challenge. First, 6 years of work logs and veterinary call records showing Taylor's professional activity while residing at the farm, totaling over 2,100 documented workdays, demonstrating that residency was in exchange for active labor and caregiving services, not provided as gratuitous housing." He set a bound document on the table. Second, a notarized written testimony from Patricia Davis herself, completed in February of this year, describing the nature of Taylor's caregiving work in specific detail: bathing, medication management, night care, financial management, property maintenance, along with an explicit statement that she considered this labor to be worth significantly more than any market rental value. Another document. Third, copies of 2 promissory notes signed by Robert Brennan, $23,000 dated March 11, 2019, and $23,000 dated September 4, 2021, both carrying 6% annual interest. Total outstanding debt as of today, $51,740. My father's face had gone a specific shade of gray. Not angry, something past angry. Something that looked like a man watching the ground shift under his feet. "I don't have that kind of," he started. "Those are civil matters to be resolved separately," Wendell said. "I'm noting them for the record." Lisa was looking at the documents. She'd stopped performing anything. She was just looking at them with the focused attention of someone who is calculating, very rapidly, whether any of this can be undone. "All this time," Aunt June said quietly, and she wasn't talking to anyone in particular. She was looking at me. "All this time, that child was there every day, and you were both—" She shook her head. She pressed her hand to the table. "I can't believe I let myself be kept out of it. I should have pushed harder." "June," Lisa started. "Don't." Aunt June's voice was very quiet and very final. "I have nothing to say to you right now." Derek, Lisa's husband, pushed his chair back from the table a few inches. It was a small movement. Lisa noticed. She noticed because she looked at him and something in her face changed. "Taylor," my father said. "Taylor." I looked at him. "Your grandmother was not in her right mind," he said. "You know that. You know what those last months were like. She said things, she agreed to things, she—" He stopped. He looked at the documents. He looked at me. "This isn't what she would have wanted." I thought about Grandma's voice on the phone. She works herself raw for this place. I see what she does. I thought about the video recording Wendell had mentioned. I thought about February 14th, 6 weeks before she died, when she'd commissioned a mineral rights assessment while she was still well enough to sign legal documents because she already knew what was coming. "Dad," I said, "she planned this for 4 years. She recorded the signing, she left written testimony. She gave the pearl brooch to Wendell personally so nobody could take it by mistake." I paused. She knew exactly what she wanted. He looked at me for a long time. His face had the look of a man who has been certain about something for years and is suddenly not certain at all. He didn't apologize. He didn't say anything else. After a moment, he got up and he left the room. His chair was still pulled out from the table. Lisa stayed for another 4 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall. She sat with her portfolio open, not reading anything in it. Then she closed it. She looked at me one more time. You always land on your feet, she said. Doesn't matter what you do. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I was going to get. She left. Derek followed her without speaking to anyone. Wendell straightened his documents. Aunt June reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Marcus Tilden quietly poured himself a glass of water. Well, Wendell said after a moment, that concludes the formal reading. He looked at me. Taylor, congratulations on your inheritance, and on your grandmother's very considerable foresight. I opened my mouth, closed it. She said something to me once, I said, about biscuits. Wendell smiled. She mentioned the biscuits conversation to me as well, he said. She was very fond of that morning. I sat in that room for a few minutes longer after the others stood and moved. I looked at the documents in front of me. 43 pages of trust, 6 years of work logs, 2 promissory notes, a mineral rights assessment that would change everything about what I'd thought my options were. I looked at the velvet pouch in my jacket pocket with the real pearl brooch inside it. Outside, through the narrow windows, Harlan County was green and ordinary and enormous. Spring had come while I wasn't looking. The trees were in new leaf. I thought, she always knew. The weeks after the reading moved strangely. Lisa did consult an attorney. The attorney, after reviewing the trust documents and the video recording and Wendell's 6-year evidence file, advised her that a challenge would be inadvisable and unlikely to succeed. She did not file. My father called me twice. Both calls, I let go to voicemail. Both voicemails were shorter than I expected. The second one was 40 seconds, mostly quiet, and then he said, I know I owe that money. I've listened to it 3 times. I haven't called back yet. I'm not sure what I'm waiting for. Something in me is still deciding. The mineral rights issue came to a resolution faster than I expected. A company had been quietly assessing the eastern acreage of the farm for 2 years. Grandma had known. And by August, a representative named Carla Whitfield from an energy resources company called Meridian Land Group came to the house with an offer. I met with Wendell and a new attorney he recommended, a woman named Patricia Holloway, before I responded to anything. We negotiated for 6 weeks. The final agreement, a 20-year mineral rights lease rather than an outright sale, at a rate I had not believed was possible for land I'd grown up calling just a farm, was signed on a Tuesday afternoon in September. I called Aunt June when it was done. She cried. I almost did. I stayed on the farm. I know people assumed I'd sell. I know people assumed the girl who'd been playing farmer for 6 years would take the money and go somewhere that felt more real. But I had 4 horses, 2 of which were young enough to train, and I had a relationship with Dr. Price's practice that had grown into something I was proud of, and I had 74 acres of land that I'd watched through every season for 6 years, and that I knew better than I knew any city I'd ever been in. I painted the back barn. I fixed the fence line on the north pasture that had been needing attention since February. I harvested Grandma's lavender at the end of summer and hung it in the kitchen rafters the way she always had. I bought a small, second-hand upright piano and put it in the living room because I'd always wanted to learn, and there was never time before, and now there was time. In October, the 14th, because I notice dates now, I notice them the way you notice things that have cost you something. I made biscuits. Her biscuits. The ones she'd taught me. I made them, and I sat at her kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and ate them while the light came in yellow and sideways through the window, the way Kentucky light comes in the fall. They were exactly right. Not too worked. Tender, not tough. I knew when to stop. If you're watching this, I want to tell you something I had to learn the hard way. The people who benefit most from your silence are the ones who call that silence respect. They will call it keeping the peace. They will call it being the bigger person. They will tell you that making things complicated serves no one, that bringing up the past is unkind, that the family needs you to be quiet right now, in this specific moment, and then in the next one, and the next, until quiet is all you know how to be. But silence isn't peace. Silence is labor. And like all labor, someone is benefiting from it. What I know now is this: the evidence that matters doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be documented. Work logs, call records, a notarized letter, a woman who knew what was coming and spent 4 years making sure the record was clear. Grandma Patricia didn't save me with drama. She saved me with specificity. Be specific. Write it down. Know when to stop working the dough. Checka. The first frost came at 5:52 a.m. on a morning in early November. I know the time because I was already up. Mare number 2, the younger one I'd named Almond, had been restless overnight, and I'd been in the barn since 4:30. I came back to the house as the sky was starting to lighten. The frost was on the grass, on the fence rails, on the hood of my truck. The whole farm was silver and still. I stood on the back porch with my coffee and looked out over the north pasture. The lavender in the kitchen behind me still held its smell. Faint now, end of season, but there. This land knows who loves it, she'd said. I looked out at the 74 acres, all of it mine, and all of it, in some true sense, still hers. Both things were true. I'd stopped trying to resolve the tension between them. A hawk crossed the south field in a long, low arc and disappeared into the tree line. I went inside and made breakfast. If you've ever done quiet work for someone who couldn't say thank you, years of it, invisible work that someone else tried to take credit for, type "I did the work" in the comments below. Or if you're still in the middle of that work right now, still showing up every day while other people make plans for what you'll leave behind, type "I'm still here." Both are the same kind of brave. Both deserve to be seen. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories like this one. Thank you for being here with me today.